always enjoy watching it.
The first story. Backstory. I used to date a cowgirl, a city boy, but her cowboy family insisted I come up for a big family weekend they had planned. I went up and quickly found I was pretty out of my element. These guys and girls were galloping around, lassoing each other, and all sorts of cliché, yeehaw cowboy stuff. I still wanted to be part of the action and offered to help around the ranch. Well, as it turned out, one of the calves had died a week prior, and we were asked to move the body from one part of the ranch to another. My then GF and I went over to it on an ATV and got ready to move it. What happened? I saw it, slumped there, about 120 pounds of hairy dead baby cow. I could hear the flies buzzing from 10 feet away. At a glance, I knew it was a hefty two-person job to lift it onto the back of the ATV. My then girlfriend hopped off the ATV and grabbed the front legs, indicating I should grab the back. Would I pass this city boy test? Would I man the fuck up and get a little dirt on me? Damn straight. I got this. Bad move. She grabbed the front legs and I had the back. We lifted. Halfway through the maneuver, I came to realize the life-altering mistake I had made. I half heard, half felt a deep gurgling sound from within the animal. The guts were shifting. Time slowed down. My face was at most 6 inches directly away from its dark, evil anus. It looked like a deep brown apple swimming underneath the knot of an old helium balloon. An apple that was trying to escape, with only my face blocking its release. Before I had a chance to drop it onto the ATV, it delivered. That dead bumhole unleashed the heaviest, moistest, hottest blast of decomposing anus air that you could ever imagine. Right into my stunned and now moistened face. The smell is beyond description, but I can assure you, this was no fart. It is off the scale of simply passing gas into a realm theorized only by science. What may have been a simple fart a week ago had festered, boiled, rotted, and perfected itself into the most concentrated form of airborne evil yet witnessed by man. I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth for a week. It's only been recently I have been able to come to terms with it mentally. TLDR. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. The second story. When I was a little kid, I really liked maple syrup. Sometimes I would just drink the straight. One day I get up in the middle of the night with a sweet tooth and go to the cabinet for a nightcap of maple goodness. Take my first swig in the dark and feel a bunch of lumpy things in the syrup. Tune on the light. Realize someone, maybe me, must have left the cap off for a while because the bottle was full of little baby cockroaches that had drowned in the syrup. The third story. Visiting a friend in East Texas who lives on like 40 acres of wooded land. There's a dry creek bed outside her house, and I see a box turtle crawling around. So being a city boy, I yell, "Tortoise!" and crawl down through dead leaves and grab it. Bring it back up and we check it out. Watch it crawl around and then put it back in the creek bed. Few minutes later, my leg itches and won't stop whenever I scratch. I lift my pants leg and see a tick with a quarter-sized leg span, quickly crawling up my calf. I flick it off, look around, and see 3 more. I wonder if they're on my other leg. So lift pants leg and see, shit you not, a dozen more, quickly disappearing past my knee, up my thigh, to burrow into my crotch. Me and all my friends are screaming like girls, and I have to run to the bathroom and strip, pulling off about 30 total ticks, 3 of which had already sunk in and began in or around my butt. Shudder. Needless to say, I was treated like a leper for the rest of the day and had the heebie-jeebies for the rest of the month. The 4th story. I've had a lot of weird shit happen to me, but I remember this one really well. I used to eat a lot of chicken in a biscuit, a lot as a kid, and basically went apeshit over them. But I never finished the entire box in one sitting, usually in 2 or 3. There's a tab on the top, like those cereal boxes. Lift tab and insert tab under here, which never work. But as a dumb kid, I didn't know better. Besides, I like my crackers a little soggy/stale, so I didn't bother to seal the box properly. So it was probably my 3rd time eating the crackers from that box, and I was munching happily while watching TV. I was reaching the bottom and just turned the box sideways, like a box of cereal, and emptied the contents into my hand. I then crammed everything into my mouth. Om nom nom, happily, when suddenly I felt an off texture. It was really weird. Kinda like a gummy bear. Oh, a freaking gecko crawled through the tab into my bag of crackers and decided to die at the bottom. And I kinda ate it. Now, I always seal my shit up real good. Real good. TLDR, I accidentally put a dead gecko in my mouth while eating crackers. The 5th story. I grew up in my father's vet clinic, being the kennel boy before and after school for a few years. Now, about this time, there was a serious parvovirus epidemic, kinda like cholera for dogs. They end up shitting themselves to death via the most disgusting runs you have ever encountered. You could smell a single parvo puppy as soon as you walked in the back, and it was a special sort of distinctive funk, almost diagnostic, with a special tang. Anyway, to set the scene, the kennels had banks of cages, and at this time, I was about head high to the floor of the upper stack. Well, mouth high, at least. One morning, I reach in to pull a poor, likely doomed puppy out to move it into a clean cage. It was a nervous little dog and decided to try and run full force in the other direction. But see, it couldn't get traction and proceed to spin out, slinging liquid shit in my face, mouth, and with a convulsive glup down my throat. Needless to say, it wasn't going to stay down there long. Problem was that I had grabbed the poor pup by the scruff and was lifting out as the convulsions hit. You know how your hands automatically go to your mouth as you start to turn inside out? Yep, you guessed it. I about drowned the dog as I sprayed the floor with breakfast. Dog returned the favor by shaking it out back over me again. Needless to say, don't think I went to school that day. The sixth story. I was a lowly CNA, certified nurse assistant. Basically, we feed people, wipe asses, give baths, fetch things, and so forth. Doing my OJT at a really horrible nursing home/rehab facility in Missouri. A lot of the patients weren't there because they were excessively old or excessively ill, but rather because they were too obese to take care of themselves. Enter a patient I'll call Bertha. Bertha was the size of a refrigerator, only shorter. She weighed in at about 480 pounds and refused every edible thing she was given, unless it was either deep fried or had sugar as its main ingredient. She, like most of the other patients, since most of the staff couldn't be bothered with assisting evacuation, wore a diaper at all times. Late one night, I was finishing up my charting at the nurse's station when I saw her call light on. I strolled down the hall to her room, and when I entered, she informed me that her diaper needed changing. Okay, no big deal. I called for 2 other aides because it takes 3 people to clean her up. 1 to hold each thigh apart, and 1 poor bastard to mop everything up in the middle. We unfastened her diaper, but hadn't taken it off yet. The butt part was underneath her, and the crotch front part were flat on the mattress. The inside of the diaper and her entire crotch perineum butt was covered in at least an inch of thick, clay-like poop. The smell was like nothing I'd ever encountered before. I could only liken it to an abstract concept. If regret, for example, had a scent, this would have been its essence. I took a deep breath to steady myself and went to the sink to start preparing the huge number of towels it would require to clean all this up. From behind me, Bertha announces that she has to pee. I ask if she can please hold it until I can get her cleaned up and put her catheter back in. But she's already gleefully going at it. Oh well, I think. It's not like it could get much worse than this, right? Wrong. I go back to the bed and observe the new damage. Now there is a pool of urine, about 6 inches deep, sitting against her vulva. The pool is walled in by her thighs and the copious amount of shit in the diaper. Not just any urine, coffee urine. That awful, dark-colored, awful-smelling stuff that comes out when all you drink for an entire month is coffee. And your kidneys are trying to tell you they've had enough. Okay, no big deal. Soak it up and get to work. I go to pick up a towel from the huge pile. Bertha said, I gotta pass gas. I shouted, "Everyone, get back!" I jumped back just in time, but the gas still bubbled up through the puddle. The resulting explosion was absolutely overwhelming. The liquid and unpleasant particles flew everywhere, on all three of us, on our clothes, faces, and hair. We all turned away, gagging, struggling not to throw up. Meanwhile, Bertha calmly took a long sip of her drink and laughed. The 7th story. I'm in the military and had to do a 2-week duty for drug testing. My job was to supervise the specimen collection to ensure everything was done properly, which meant I had to watch individuals urinate into a cup. One guy I was supervising was very shy about urinating, and I ended up sitting in the restroom with him for over 30 minutes, waiting for him to produce. He was visibly tense, pacing, and muttering frustrated things like, "Come on, you piece of," and questioning what was wrong with him. He was quite upset about the situation. After about 40 minutes, he finally managed to start urinating into the cup. Unfortunately, he was standing and strained for so long that he actually became faint and collapsed backward. As I went to catch him, he was still in the middle of urinating, and some of it ended up splashing onto my uniform and a little on my face. Shivers. Good times. The 8th story. I was 8 years old, lived on a U.S. Army post in Heidelberg, Germany. Between rows of buildings, there was a common grassy area. Parts of it were designated for walking your dog. No one ever picked up their dog shit there, so it became known as the Dookie Minefield. There was dog shit of every color, age, shape, and size everywhere. You had to tiptoe to keep from stepping in a pile. Anyhow, my family was pet-sitting this gigantic dog for some friends. The dog was great. It loved playing, would lick you to death, and would run up to you the moment he spotted you. He especially liked my dad. The dog would charge through the apartment to him when my dad came home from work. So I'm out walking the dog in the Dookie Minefield. Since the dog is so much bigger than me, I wrapped his leash around my arm a few times. Dad comes home. Dog looks up when he hears the car door close and sees my dad. Dog takes off, full charge. I go airborne like Superman. I land chest first in a huge pile. The dog drags me down the hill to my father, through pile after pile of dog shit. By the time I got to the bottom of the hill, I was covered in it. I had to get hosed off and then strip outside before going into the building. The 9th story. I worked in a meatpacking plant. My job was to dispose of the inedibles. As you can imagine, this was the most disgusting thing that happened to me. But it happened every day for 9 months. Out of all the days, though, there was one that stood out above the rest. I was carting a metal tub filled with 800 pounds of the inedible portions of a cow. My job was to put it on a lift in a small closet-like room. It would be lifted about 10 feet into the air, and the cow parts would be dumped on a conveyor belt, which carried the contents to an open-topped semi-trailer. On this particular day, the person working in the chicken half of the building brought his inedibles over because their conveyor belt was broken. Without my knowledge, he dumped a 10-gallon bucket of chicken juice into my tub. Chicken juice is the most foul scent known to man. Anyways, I put the tub on the lift, clueless to the hell I am about to endure. The tub is spilling onto the conveyor when all of the sudden, the 10 gallons of chicken juice begins to pour out, bouncing off of the conveyor belt and landing flat on my head, shoulders, and body. I was looking up. It was 9 a.m. I had to work 7 more hours, covered in chicken slop and enjoying its aftertaste and after smell as it had gone in both my mouth and nose. The 10th story. I used to work in a kennel bathing dogs. I had a phenomenally overweight German Shepherd on the table. By no fault of her own, this dog was just disgusting. The owner was a chain smoker who apparently lived in a very small dwelling. He brought his dog in to us about once a month, and every time we had to throw every type of deodorant, detergent, etc. at this dog to get the smell out. Anyways, I had her on the table, drying her off, which for those unfamiliar with kennel operations, basically requires an industrial-sized hair dryer mounted on a wall. I was working on the back end. I lifted her tail to dry off her crotch area when suddenly there was just a brown mist. I look over and my entire shoulder and arm are covered in diarrhea. Worse, the dryer had caught half of it, so there was a bunch all over the dog. Had to rebathe her, and more. Across the room on the opposite wall, the boss and a few of the other workers come in when they hear my string of expletives and just fall to the floor laughing before helping me clean it up. Sadly, I miss that job. The 11th story, perianal abscess. I will share this. It could have prevented by going to a doctor earlier. I had mild discomfort around my ass, ignored it for a while, thought it might be A, hemorrhoids, or B, some pinched vein. Both things that are embarrassing, especially if you are a college student, and not really dangerous and tend to go away. Well, it did not go away. On one weekend, it started to hurt. I went to the doctor on Monday, and he sent me straight to the hospital for operation on Tuesday morning. It turned out that it was an abscess, and it had grown and grown because around the ass, there is lots of tissue to grow in. They ended up cutting out about half a fistful of flesh. And of course, they could not sew it tight because it was a carving out like an impact crater. So the whole idea was, let the tissue regrow, keep it clean, right next to your asshole, and don't mind it secreting blood and clear fluid. It took 6 months in total to fully heal. Lesson learned. If something doesn't feel right, go to a doctor. They have seen it before, so no need to be embarrassed or anything. Bleeding into your brief for months is much worse. Boxers are not recommended with an axe wound down there. TLDR. Pain in the ass ended up to half a pound of flesh cut out of ass, followed by 6 months of female during period experience. The 12th story. I was hungry on my way to work, so I decided grab a quick bite at an Indian restaurant. The food was extremely spicy, but I ate it anyway because I was extremely hungry. My stomach was aching all day, and on my way back from work, I suddenly felt a huge urge to shit within a few minutes. After a minute or so, it felt like an hour. I found a McDonald's. I bolted through the entrance and tried to open the restroom door, but unfortunately, it was occupied. A few seconds later, I couldn't control it anymore and let out a nasty storm of shit in my pants. I could feel the shit trickling down my thigh. I looked around, and I could see the look of disgust on people's faces as they were hit by a wave of stench. Soon, the restroom door opened. I got inside and looked around for something to clean my pants with, but there wasn't any toilet paper. I had to use my hands. The 13th story. I was volunteering for cleanup in Slidell, LA, 8 months after Hurricane Katrina. The house we were cleaning out had not been touched until we got there. The volunteers warned us that the fridge would be in the worst shape because it had been sitting completely underwater for a while, with all of the food still inside, then left to bake. We wrapped it in duct tape and started to guide it out of the kitchen. I was in front, leading the way while someone pushed it on a dolly. Whoever was pushing the fridge forgot to unplug it from the wall. When the cord snagged, the fridge started to tumble forward. I managed to keep it from falling, but the door still jerked open and all of the seawater inside came spilling out on me. I can't even begin to describe the smell. Volunteers working on the other side of the house ran out yelling. Once we had it upright again, the guy and I both ran out of the house. But I had to stay a safe distance away from everyone. Took another hour before anyone would go back in the house. TLDR, fridge full of 8-month-old seawater and rotting food. Dumped all the water on me. The 14th story. We were moving into a new home in Georgia that came with a full-sized pool, 3 to 12 feet with a diving board. Now this house had been on the market for quite some time, so the pool was left unattended for a couple months now. You could see a thick film of dead bugs, spiders, a few snakes, frogs, lizards, a bird, etc. You name it, it was probably in there. This film was so thick, it actually stood on the water a good 2 to 3 inches. Anyway, to clean the pool, we needed to find the long vacuum to suck everything up. We can't find it anywhere, and the only other place it could be was at the bottom of the pool somewhere. Considering I was the tallest person by a good 6 inches, somehow I was volunteered to go in and look for it. Again, I have no recollection of how they got me to do this and why I never suggested finding something else to swirl around the pool to find it. So, trying to make this as bearable as possible, I start in the shallow end, working my way in a zigzag pattern as I feel layers and layers of death colliding with me. And only God knows what the hell I wash squishing under my feet with every step. I get to the part where it begins to slope down. I unfortunately kept going, and it wasn't until I was struggling to keep my face and mouth just high enough out of the water to keep from inhaling who knows what. I finally found the vacuum in the very center of the deepest part of the pool. Like, that was really surprising. Side note, we always joked about finding a dead body, and while we didn't, we did find one of these, which scared the hell out of us when it first reached the surface. The 15-story old people pasta. I had to fix a hot tub. The owner said she thought the pipes were deteriorating because strips of plastic were coming out of the jets. It wasn't plastic. How long it had been since she drained and refilled the tub? Never. Not once in 5 years. They should be drained every 4 to 6 months because the water can only dissolve so much geriatric body oil and juice in the event that one doesn't drain and refill. The excess OJs build up inside the plumbing, commonly referred to as white water mold. The treatment is to add a massive amount of oxidizer to the water. I added a granular peroxide and left it to circulate overnight. When I returned, I opened the cover and turned on the jets. The tub turned into an unholy pasta maker, each jet pumping out god-awful amounts of vile, fettuccine-looking strings of senior sloth. Then I had to clean it up.
Subscribe, like, and write in the comments what you think about these stories. Goodbye.